Welcome back to the Cal Park Bros podcast. Jason and I are fresh off the first segment, kind of regaling in the fact that there's a little bit of sweet justice for some of the involved parties for the January 6th Capitol riot. Oh, by the way, that unfortunate SOB that it's going to do 8 months of time. There were two other individuals who had already been found guilty and were then sentenced. One got probation, lady in Indiana, and of course, second dude, ties to white supremacy, Florida. Everybody knows Florida, man.
I'm sensing a common theme here with Florida. I'd be curious to find out once we get more people that to come in the public about them getting sentenced or whatever, where they're actually from. I'm very curious about that. I'm sure they're not mostly from Florida, or maybe they are. I don't know. I'm very curious to find like just how far people come to be at this event, quote unquote, air quotes.
I love the quotations on event. That was great. Yeah, we should do like a running tally. We should do a January 6th capital sentencing fucking dashboard.
Well, we got 3 votes for Florida already, so there you go.
Cool. In segment 2, we're going to be talking about critical race theory. Jason, this is another one of your topics. I know I got my own personal opinions about critical race theory, mainly because it often comes up during school board meetings where I call it critical race theory bingo, because people love to bring it up in an argument where it has nothing to actually do with critical race theory. It's just a fucking buzzword that people love to toss in an argument that they're already fucking losing. What are your thoughts on critical race theory?
I'm gonna stop you right there because I want to hear your thoughts on this first because I know your opinions about this were a lot stronger than mine, based on what we talked about yesterday. So I'm gonna cut your question off and throw it right back at you. What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are that the people that are actually, well, we should probably start by actually telling people what critical race theory is.
Good idea.
So, the concept, and I'm referencing an article from Associated Press. The concept known as critical race theory is a new lightning rod of the GOP. But what exactly is it? The term seemed to appear in state houses and at political rallies from almost nowhere. Over the past few months, it has morphed from an obscure academic discussion point on the left into a political rallying cry on the right. Critical race theory is a way of thinking about America's history through the lens of racism. Scholars developed it during the 1970s and 80s in response to what they viewed as a lack of racial progress during the civil rights legislation, following the civil rights legislation of the 1960s. It centers on the idea that racism is systemic in the nation's institutions and that they function to maintain the dominance of white people in society. Architects of the theory argue that the United States was founded on the theft of land and labor, and that federal law has preserved the unequal treatment of people on the basis of race. Proponents also believe it's culturally invented, not biological. Okay, now that we actually covered that and given a little bit of background, the reason why I have such a strong opinion is because, as I stated almost flippantly and sarcastically, you've got people in school districts under the impression that their fucking teenager or their kindergartner are going to actually be learning about critical race theory in public school. The reality is, much of the critical race theory that people are so worried about, it's actually being taught at the collegiate level if you want to be a teacher. So if I had a mom or a dad of a parent that's a kindergartner and they're asking about dumb shit like critical race theory, I'm like, okay, where the fuck are you getting your news from? Because I can almost guarantee you that shit is not coming up um, in your kids' curriculum. Just because there's some sort of bias survey or somebody asks you to read Kill a Fucking Mockingbird doesn't mean magically critical race theory is being integrated into your school curriculum. And that's why I call it critical race theory bingo. So that's where I'm at.
The fact that you called it critical race theory bingo, not the critical race theory Olympics, I'm surprised at that. 'Cause I know you like throwing using that term out there, the Olympics, when it comes to anything, you know.
Well, now that the Olympics are here finally, I've decided to pivot from Olympics to bingo. So you're welcome.
Yeah, okay. We'll pretend that matters. Um, so let me ask you this then, because you said this yesterday too. So your stance is that critical race theory isn't going to be taught in elementary schools or high schools, but more in the college level for teachers. Is that your stance, sir?
My stance is that people are worried about shit that really doesn't affect them. And more importantly, it's probably a good idea to have a fundamental understanding about racism being systemic in the first fucking place, because it's the real reason that anyone would have an issue with critical race theory at all is because it's confronting a lot of our fantasies about American exceptionalism anyway. Because then you would have to acknowledge that you've lived in a country basically that does have these systemic problems, because race is a social construct.
Okay. So also let me confirm this is that you're saying that simply teaching let's go back. Simply offering courses, new courses in high schools or elementary schools, like specific Black history courses or Black literature courses where they talk about works done by Black authors. You're saying that that itself isn't necessarily critical race theory. Is that correct? That you're saying that is that correct?
That's not what I said.
I'm asking you.
Oh, but you are asking me, and I'm saying that's not critical race theory. Critical race theory is about actually addressing the fact that we live in a country where those things happen, where you have, I mean, Jason, we went to an amazing high school, and even in our standard like history course, you don't even fucking get to the civil rights movement. Okay,
Well, and let's not put it just on our high school though, too, because let's be honest here. How much of this stuff did we learn? Even that fucking excuse me, language. Sorry,
my God.
shut up. Don't even go there. How much would we learn at Calumet about this stuff? Probably not very much. Maybe if we did, it was probably during 1 month, like the Dance Africa trip, which actually wasn't in February. So let me take that back. But when it comes to it was actually in October or September when we did that. By the way, yeah. Good old Dance Africa hashtag that. But yeah, but primarily we didn't really when it comes to history or social studies in Calumet, we I don't recall really us focusing too much on Black history or Black literature or anything like that. It was just a standard, George Washington, Abe Lincoln, you know, stuff like that. Which now learn that stuff isn't a bad thing, but I don't recall Calumet teaching us that stuff either. So I don't want to put it just on Shepard, Alan B. Shepard, Astros Rock hashtag. But yeah, I don't recall ever really going through this stuff at all through our schooling. So just want to put that out there. I could be wrong. You can tell me if I am, but I don't recall it.
And what I'm saying is, I'm not blaming the high school. I'm not blaming teachers. Jason, you and I are in our 40s now. We should be processing information that we received in our earlier years differently. We should be distilling that differently. We should be questioning it differently. We should be reevaluating it differently. All I'm saying is if you're still, especially right after the 4th of July or Memorial Day, if you're one of those people that just cannot stop yourself from saying America is the greatest country on the place on the face of the earth, and you have no frame of reference for, like, for example, I moved into a new subdivision, and there's a homeowners association, and of course, there's bylaws in that. If you have no idea that there were certain covenants literally put into certain communities saying, hey, under no circumstances will you sell this to a black person. If that's news to you and you have no concept of that being a thing in this place we called America, then that's systemic.
Hang on. You please tell me you're not indicating that that's something currently in your current HOA, something similar
No,
to that?
bringing up the fact that, you know, I moved, and people, when you move to a place that has, a homeowners association, there are rules, there are regulations. And I simply use that as historically, there have been several communities years ago that stipulated under no circumstances that you sell to a person of color. Could you sell to a black person?
Gotcha.
That's what I'm saying. That's the systemic part. Because if it's just one asshole country, city, or community, that's one thing. Because that's a lot of times what people try to do when they talk race, which is part of the problem. We got a black president. Fucking Calumet Park had the Obama Drive sign, and everybody thought, what the hell else do you darkies want? You got a black president. Racism solved, right? You got Jay-Z at the inauguration. What else do you want? That is our oversimplified fantasy about race, ignoring the fact that racist ass covenants existed, ignoring the fact Jim Crow, all of it. I don't know why you're laughing.
Bro, because you just said on a podcast, what else do darkies want? I'm sorry, I was not expecting that. I'm sorry, let's bring it back a little bit. Let's bring it back here.
I'm sorry. Was that a bad Mitch McConnell impersonation?
Okay. All right, we got out of control here, folks. Not that this never happened before on the Cowpart Bros podcast, but here we are in episode 14, out of control.
I mean, that's literally what we're talking about here. these, and that's my frustration. Some poor fucking mom or dad in their local PTA or a school district losing their shit about critical race theory, but their idea of, America being exceptional when it comes to race is that, that their daughter likes that one Ice Cube song. The fuck? No. That's not us overcoming.
Yeah. Sorry. Let me calm myself down a little bit. Sorry.
Yes, please simmer down, because I'm worried about you now.
Okay, let me stop. But yeah, so I definitely hear what you're saying when it comes to, critical race theory not being the same when it comes to um, just simply adding coursework that is focused on teaching more about Black history or Black literature and things like that. Um, Not too long ago in the Francis Howell School District, which is in St. Charles, well, St. Charles, Missouri, which is in the St. Louis area. They basically had a board meeting where critical race theory was discovered or discussed rather, and from an article I found on KSDK, which is a news station in St. Louis, they mentioned that the school district is wanting to add or offer a Black History course and a Black Literature course for their high school as electives. So it's not required for a student to take, but it's there for them to take as an elective. But but the article talks about includes this as critical race theory. So in the meeting, there was, of course, people for this, people against it. And I have to imagine some people are probably against it because they're against critical race theory as opposed to being for or against just those two particular courses. But there was one gentleman who spoke. I don't think I need to go by name on this, but he said, "We need to nip this in the bud. I'm here tonight to rise in opposition to the proposed BH and BL." Couldn't say out the full courses, but BH and BL curriculum as designed. It's laced with attendance and language of critical race theory and other leftist indoctrination. So don't know. I'm not sure if the article's not mentioning something here, or if he just has a misunderstanding about what's being added here. But I don't know what kind of leftist indoctrination can be when it comes to teaching Black history or in a Black literature course teaching works by Black authors. I'm not really sure if it's the same thing. Maybe mistaken. But I will say one of my friends, Camellia Johnson, who works in that school district as an educator and also has children or a child who is currently in that system as well, and also had one formerly. She even said right here, it says, "We all need to look at the content before we consider this information hurtful to anybody." Look at the content. So what she was saying was that look at what we're trying to add to the coursework as electives again. And look at the content of these courses before you just go out and say, "Hey, these courses are hurtful towards anybody," just because we're teaching things from a different perspective than these kids were getting before. And now there are actual kids in that school district who actually are in support of that because they want to learn. They were open to learning something different, or at least having that different option for people who want to learn it. So there are some students and parents who actually are in favor of this, but for some reason there are people who are against it. And I think that just goes into what you're saying is that people just aren't willing to accept the fact that one, that there are different perspectives out there in the world, different from their own, and they're not willing to listen to it. And I think I brought this up before, an episode before, when it comes to, I can't remember. Oh, matter of fact, it was our discussion about cancel culture. I was mentioning that people aren't willing to listen to the other side of things. They just think that, oh, you're just being a left person, you're just being a snowflake, whatever. But yet they're not willing to listen to the other side, just realizing, hey, here's a different perspective. Even though whatever they might say, I might not agree with, they just don't respect that different side of things. And I think that's what the problem really is. And the theory at the base of all this stuff is that people are not willing to listen for themselves, and also not willing to let their kids even make up with their own minds when it comes to this as well. I don't want them to even hear this stuff at all. I'm going to cut this off right now.
You also hear that sometimes too when people are like, "Oh, you're being fresh off of Pride Month, we see this shit all the time. It's like you're trying to indoctrinate my child. My child shouldn't be exposed to this. They're so impressionable." Ignoring the fact your ass has been dressing them up and all sorts of shit that you've been literally putting them in a fantasy. Oh, this person's gonna be that person. This child could have like a 3-year-old fucking playmate, and you're literally already coming up with fantasies about them getting married 25 fucking years from now. But that's okay.
Another thing I want to bring up real quick as well, if you don't mind, is
Go
that
for it.
as of right now, there are a total of 22 states, 22, that either have a bill passed and signed into law or have a bill introduced in the legislature to prevent critical race theory being taught in their school systems. 22, so almost half the country. as of right now. And I will say that in many of the states that are one of those 22, we have listeners in some of those states. So definitely, if you are in one of those states that have the bill already passed and signed into law, or a bill introduced in the legislature, definitely would mind hearing from you and your opinion on what's going on in your state. Send us a message to calparkbros@gmail.com, message to the show via our Anchor home base, pop us a message on any one of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. But that's half the country, Terrence. Almost half the states in this country are introducing legislation to prevent this being taught in their schools. Half the country. When I found this information on NBC News, there's a map showing of which states in particular are in one of those two categories or not. Now,
I mean,
Illinois and Indiana are in neither one of the two as of right now, as you can probably guess why. But yeah, there are several other states in the Midwest in itself, and others as well that are. So I just found that very interesting that almost half the country doesn't want that taught in their schools.
yeah, I think it's all about how you position it. And once the GOP figured out a way to, oh, we're going to couch this as revisionist history, which is ironic because we find things every day that have been withheld from us on a historical level. So
Can
who's
you
really revising history?
can you guess which state is one of those that have already passed bills in the law already? My favorite
Texas.
state that I love talking about.
Texas.
Good old freaking Texas. There you go.
Man, you got to like give Texas a break because it's not a lot of Texans' fault that Greg Abbott's a fucking idiot.
Well, first of all, why would I give Texas a break? Why would I do that? For what?
We might have some potential listeners in Texas. Also, pretty good fucking barbecue.
We do have plenty of listeners in Texas. That's one of the states where people listen to us. And guess what? Like I said before, if you have an opinion on this, send us a message. I'd love to hear from you, whether you're for it or against it. So again, I say, why should I give them a break?
You should give them a break because we're about to go to break. We will go back to this at some point because, yeah, critical race theory bingo is not going anywhere, folks. I can assure you of that. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the Burger King sign and the fallout that went viral. Coming up next on Cal Park Bros.